Hi there, I wanted to make a short screencast that will go over what you might expect on the final exam for the first semester of Intro to Computer Science. So before I go over what you will need to know, let me tell you what you do not need to know. You do not need to know C# syntax that's unique to Windows Forms programming. So you don't need to know about making assignments to the text property of a label. You don't need to know what a click event is. You don't need to know any of that, those types of things. You also do not need to know any of the syntax that is unique to XNA Game Studio. I'm not going to quiz you on rectangles or texture 2D variables. Those questions won't be there. What you do need to know is what I'm going to go over now. So let's see. So you need to know how to these symbols here, what they mean and how you use them. So the first two are two forward slashes, and that stands for, it means that anything that follows it is a comment. Then you need to know what modulus division is. It's the percent sign. So 78 mod 7, you do the division, and your answer is the remainder. So that would be equal to 1. So you need to know how to do modulus division. So you just divide, and then the answer is the remainder. Then you need to know what the two forward slash or vertical slashes are, and that means or, the logical operator or. Two ampersands mean and. An exclamation point means not. And then you need to know what plus equals, minus equals, divide equals, and I guess I could have done times equals means. So what does that mean? It's really the equivalent of x equals x plus 2. This would be y equals y minus 3. This is z equals z divided by 3. And y asterisk equal 8 would mean y equals y times 8. So those are assignment statements. And what happens in assignment statements? You take what's on the right, you compute it, and you assign it to what's on the left. So essentially, in these statements, you are incrementing the variable. You're changing the variable by a certain amount and making that new value be the new value that is assigned to the variable. So if x was 2 going into x plus equals 2, then after that line of code would execute, x would be 6 because you would add 6 to it. All right, so you also need to know the basic data types in C#, and Boolean bool values are true or false. Ints are integers, positive, negative, 0, all integers. Doubles are decimal values, and positive or negative decimal values. So anything that has a decimal value, you would make a double variable. And then a string value is a series of characters in quotation marks. Okay, moving on. All right, so you need to also know how to convert between binary and a decimal value. So, for example, you'd want to know how to convert 35 into binary. So I don't know if you remember how I had you do this, but I said, okay, draw the place values. This is always the ones. This is the twos. This is the fours. That's the eights. Then you'd go to the 16s, the 32s, the 64s, and the 128s. And you would start on the left and say, okay, are there any 128s and 35? No, there are not. So you put a 0. Are there any 64s and 35? No, they're not. So you put a 0. Are there any 32s and 35? Yes, there are. There's 1, right? So you put a 1, and then you subtract out that 132 from 35. Okay, and now you're working with 3. Okay, then you say, all right, are there any 16s in 3? No, so you put a 0. Are there any 8s in 3? No, you put a 0. Are there any 4s in 3? No, you put a 0. How about any 2s in 3? Yes, there is 1 2. So you subtract it out, and now you're left with 1. And you move on. Are there any 1s in 1? Yes, there is 1 1 in 1. So you put a 1 there. That means 35 as an 8-bit binary number is going to be 00100011. Okay, then going the other way, a little bit easier maybe. So I'm going to put a 0 there on the end. So let's pretend that my binary number is 00111010. So you do the same thing. You look at the place values. So those are the 1s, these are the 2s, those are the 4s, the 8s, 16s, 32s, 64s, and the 128s. So what do I have? I don't have any 1s. I have 1 2, so I'm going to add a 2. No 4s. I have 1 8, so I'm going to add 8. I have 1 16. I have 1 32. And then I don't have anything else. So now I just add those together. So 2 plus 8 is 10, plus 16 is 26, plus 32 is 58. So that would be your decimal version of 00111010. Okay, how about indentation? So you need to know, recognize good indentation. And here's a good example here of indenting correctly. So basically, anytime you do an open curly brace, you the very next line is indented inward. So the line before the opening curly brace will be at the same level as the opening curly brace, as you can see here. Then, whenever you need to do a closing curly brace, you come back out for the closing curly brace. Okay, you would also need to be able to identify, we did a lot with for loops, so you're going to want to be able to use for loops with simple arrays. And you need to know the syntax of a for loop, and that is going to be int, you do for, and then you say int I equals, this is the starting value, okay, this is the condition that allows the loop to continue. So basically, as long as I is less than 4, the loop is going to continue to iterate. And then lastly, this is how much you increment the counter variable by. Alrighty, so in this loop, you would want to be able to identify the fact also with one-dimensional arrays that we're declaring an array of int values here that is of length 4. So that's how many places are in the array. So when you declare an array and you have a number in the brackets, that doesn't say what position you're talking about. That's declaring how long the array is actually going to be. So that means I'm making an array of length 4, And you know what? Let me undo that. Nope, I can't undo that. Oh, who knew? Okay. I'm making a blank array of length 4 called nums. So, okay, so then I have for int I equals 0, I less than 4i plus plus. So what are the values of I going to be? They're going to be 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then I do an if statement each time through the loop. So I'm going to draw a t-table or a table to trace the values. And I'm actually going to draw the array 4 times, right? Because each time something happens to the array. And you know what? I'm even going to draw it a 5th time to put what the value of the array was before the loop started. Okay, so I'm also going to put I, so this is nums. So when the loop starts, nums has nothing in it. So the first time through the loop, I is 0. So you say, okay, is I percent 3 equal to 0? Yes, it is. So I'm going to, um, what am I going to do? I'm going to multiply I times 2 and assign that to position 0. So I'm going to get a 0 put a 0 in position 0. Now I'm going to do, move on, and I is going to be 1. All right. So I say, okay, is 1% 3 equal to 0? No, it is not. So then I'm going to do the next line, which is nums1 equals 3 times 1. So that is you're going to multiply 3 times 1, you're going to get 3, and you're going to assign that to position 1. So now I'm up to 0, 3 in my array. Now I is 2. So is 2%, 2 mod 3 equal to 0? No, it is not. So I'm going to do the else situation, and I'm going to say nums2 equals 3 times 2. So that would be 6. Okay, so now the last time through the loop, I is 3. So is 3% or mod 3 equal to 0? Yes, it is. So I'm going to multiply I'm going to say nums3 equals 2 times 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. That assigns a 6 to nums3. So I should end up with 0366. Okay, so now if I said, okay, what is nums1 going to be equal to? Well, this is position 0, 1, 2, and 3. Nums1 is going to be 3. Okay, so here's a simple for loop that does not involve an array. So I have 2 variables, and actually, you know what? I really have 3 variables. I'm going to have I, the counter variable, x, and y. And x starts off at 7, and y starts off at 5. So this loop goes from 0 to 4. So it's going to go, actually, it's going to go 5 times. Each time through, the values are going to range from 0 to 4. So first of all, it says x plus equals 2. So when I is 0, first time through the loop, x is going to, actually it's not going to be 2, you're going to add 2 to what its value is initially. So now we're up to 9. Then it says y plus equals x. Y was 5, so now I'm going to add 9 to it and get 14. Next time through, I is 1. So I'm going to do x plus equals 2, and then y plus equals x. So 14, basically this adds x to y, and I'm going to add 11 to 14 and get 25. And I think each time through, let's see, x goes up by 2, and then y, let's see, here it's going to go up by 13. So it's going to go up to 38. Here it's going to go up by 15 to 53. And lastly, it's going to go up by 17 to 70. So at the end, x is going to have a value of 17 and y is going to have a value of 70. Okay, here's another one. This time we have a nested loop. Okay, we have one loop inside another loop. So when you have a nested loop, the number of times the loop executes is going to be however many times the outer loop executes by how many ever times the inner loop executes. You would multiply those together to find the total number of iterations of what's in the very middle. So this one's going to go 5 times, this one's going to go 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. So this sum statement is actually going to be executed 25 times. So if I ask you how many times will a nested loop iterate, it's going to be however many times the outer loop executes times however many times the inner loop executes. All right, and I'm not going to work through it completely, but here's the way you would set it up if you were tracing the values. So the first time through, I is going to be 0. And then when I is 0, the inner loop is going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, I is going to be 1. Then the inner loop is going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the way it would work out if you were actually doing your t-table to trace the values. Okay, so you need to know Boolean logic, the simple Boolean logic with and, or not. So remember, the rules of and are if A is true, B is true, A and B is going to be true, A or B, A or B is going to be true, and not A would be false. Okay, so what if A is true and B is false? Well, as long as one of them is false, A and B is going to be false. As long as one of them, at least one of them is true, A or B is still going to be true. And of course, not A. Well, let me just eliminate that one. Okay, how about false and true? Well, A and B is going to be false because as long as one of them is false with the and situation, both A and B will be false, but A or B will be true. And then lastly, when they're both false, A and B is false and A or B is false. So the difference between A and B is the situation where you have one being true and one being false. In the case of or, it results in a true statement. In the case of and, it results in a false statement. All right, so how do you evaluate these expressions? Well, you start on the inside. And actually, you do parentheses, not, ands, and then or. And you do and or from left to right, much like you do multiplication and division in PEMDAS from left to right if there are no grouping symbols. Okay, so what does that mean here? Well, I'm going to do x and y. So it says x is true, y is false. So x, true and false, is going to give you false, right? Okay, then not true is going to give you false because the opposite of true is false. And so false or false is going to give me false. So consequently, sum is not going to change because you would only execute sum minus equals 3 if you got a true statement, but we got a false statement. All right, moving on. Well, I think that was kind of the last one. All right, so let me just kind of do a quick review. I'm going to open Visual Studio right now, and let me think of a few other things you might want to do. You might want to be able to do some really basic coding bat problems, like, oh, there was one more here. Let's see, what was it? I just scrolled too far past it. Oops. Let me go back to my pen. No, I guess there wasn't. Okay, so let me open Visual Studio. And I'm going to make an array here, or make a new program. And let's say I want you to, so I'm going to say public static void and no, bool first and last. And I say, okay, write a method that returns true if either the first value or last value of the array are equal to 7. And let me change the name to first and last 7. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to need a return statement. So when it says return something, I'm going to need to return something. So let me say return true. Okay, just so I get rid of the boxes. Alright, so nums is my array that I'm going to be looking at. So I'm going to need to write an if statement, right? And if the first value or the last value are 7, I want to return true. If neither of them are 7, I want to return false. So nums is my array. So how do I reference the first position in the array? I say num0. So I say if num0 is equal to 7, or nums, now how do I reference the last position in an array? What is the index of the last position in an array? Well, if I have an array of length 7, the last position would be 6. If I have an array of length 10, the last position would be 9. So that means the last position, the index of the last position is going to be the length of the array minus 1. So I'm going to say if that is equal to 7, return true. Else return false. Oops, and I misspelled return. There, that's better. Okay, so that means I'm going to return, I'm going to check the array. If it's true, or if either the first value is 7 or the last value is 7, I return true. Otherwise, I turn false. So you want to be able to write a simple method like that, like from Coding Bat, where you're given an array, it gives you directions to return something, where you run some test, and the output of your little test determines what you return. So it's going to be a conditional statement inside inside your method. All right, I don't want to drone on forever, but that's essentially what's going to be on the final exam. It's probably going to be 25 multiple choice and maybe one or two little coding bat type problems where you have to write the code. Okay, I guess the snow was a bust, but that's good for me because we have a lot of work to do on our robot. So I'm looking forward to getting back. I'm still in Pittsburgh right now, but I should be back tomorrow, Wednesday. And so get some, I guess you probably got some rest while you were home in this snow day, and we will see you soon. Cheers.